questions you might have. And after I see how the media has dealt with the last couple of people who've been standing here, the first thing I want to do is congratulate the media, because it's about time that the media grasps the real power. I was just talking to one member of the media, and let me tell you, I agree. There is no way in a transparent system the media is supposed to be standing outside here when the goings on are inside there, waiting for Shane Warren and Molithron to come out and spin, and then you got to try and decipher some kind of truth from the spin. And the reality is you should be in there watching it happen, filming it happen, and drawing your own conclusions so that you can ask informed questions, rather than trying to filter what different spin doctors are giving you. The one thing that has come out of this exercise, in my mind, is that the truth seems to be a foreign language. Very few people are capable of looking you in your face and telling you the truth. I don't know why. So the first thing I'd like to say to you about this whole process that is happening, as you know, 2 regions are finished. The one truth that has come out so far in respect of the count of those 2 regions is the extraordinary professionalism with which the count was conducted in those 2 regions, the exactness of the count. As you see, the recount has produced very, very few changes. The end result, the numbers are almost identical, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 stations in each of those regions. This count in Guyana of the statements of poll, the count of the ballots in the places of poll, let me correct that, the count of the ballots which produce statements of poll has so far been done with professionalism and with integrity. The statement of recount has been almost identical with the statement of count in regions 1, regions 2, which are complete. So that's the first thing we need to look at. Now, I know that a lot of spin doctors have been spinning and conflating issues and confusing things. But there's a very simple truth to this thing. Pieces of paper exist in those boxes. They are ballots. All of us, I hope all of you voted. All of us went on the 2nd of March. We stick our finger in the ink. We showed our ID. We took those pieces of paper, one piece of paper, and put it in the box after we put our X where we wanted to put it. 1 regional, 1 general. The job of the people at the polling station after close of shop that day was to count those pieces of paper. Not to ask themselves who voted, or if the person who put his X there was dead, or if the person who put his X there didn't exist, or if somebody had turned up twice. Those pieces of paper at the end of the exercise were there to be counted. And in regions 1 and 2, as we have seen, the people who counted those pieces of paper counted them correctly and came up with the exact result. So that when they generated the statements of poll, sent them to the central office, the regional officer assessed the statements of poll, and the figures were exact. It was done so well. So far, the only anomalies that have come up in region 4. And this is what I want to put to you. No spin. In region 4, in 800 places of poll, the presiding officer at the close of play on the 2nd of March closed his doors, and in the presence of APNU reps, PPP reps, GECOM, the international folk, whoever, counted those pieces of paper, counted the ballots, and came up with numbers. Each count was represented in a statement of poll which says how many votes for APNU, how many votes for PPP.
You could speak up on the vote.
It's a very simple exercise. That is what was done. What we are doing here is we are doing that same exercise all over again. We are counting the ballots, the pieces of paper, to see if the people who counted first counted accurately. And so far what we are finding is that the figures on the statement of poll, which reflect the number of ballots cast, the number cast for one party and for the other party and for the third party and fourth parties, the statements of poll were created professionally by those folk in the polling places. The only variable that is coming out is Mr. Mingo's declaration of what that count was. There is no other variable. So in one area, you will see that the statement of poll for the original count of ballots showed APNU 83 votes. When we go in there and we count, the statement of recount shows APNU 83 votes. And when you listen to the audio of the GECOM official reading the results for that place of poll and for that box number, it will show 123 votes for APNU. That is the only difference that is happening here. So the only irregularity, the only fraud took place in Ashman's building and then again in Kingston at the GECOM head office, when Mr. Mingo or his officers read from a spreadsheet numbers which did not reflect the numbers which existed on the statements of poll for those places of poll. That is the only variable. Now, if that is the simple truth, there's another simple truth. When the original statement was done and Mr. Mingo read his report, APNU said, we've won these elections and we are satisfied with how the count of these ballots was done. Here we are counting the same ballots. We're not counting different ballots. We're not counting different pieces of paper. We're counting the same ballots. So if they were dead, people put in X's on the ballots in the first place, it's those same ballots we counting that got the dead people X's. If overseas people put X's, it's those same ballots we are now counting. The same ballots we are now counting. That APNU was happy to accept a victory when Mr. Mingo counted them. But now we are all in there counting them, independently and transparently. APNU don't want to see the result of that count. And APNU are now introducing questions which have nothing to do with how many pieces of paper were in the box. So I want to ask you, is this spin or is this truth? That if you got a box with 100 pieces of paper and you count that and declare a winner, and that same box is recounted with a different result, the only variable, the only twist is the box was counted by Mr. Mingo the first time, and now it is being counted with everybody watching. That's the only twist. That's not difficult. This might not be news anymore, but I have been asked to comment on it. I commented on one media site last night, so you might not be interested, but I'll just say it quickly. As you know, I had received a letter from the Ministry of Public Health saying that I'm showing respiratory symptoms. I had, of course, protested. It wasn't true. I'm saying, no, it wasn't true. It was a lie. But they asked me to get tested. I have been tested. I was tested at Mercy Hospital. After they received the paraphernalia to do the test, they had to get a reagent so that they don't just do the swab, but they do the whole test themselves. And I was happily able to respond to the ministry to say, here I am, COVID-free, and I will be coming back. Although there was no doubt that I never had COVID, I could not come back during the period before I got tested because you raise too many questions. You put people at risk, or you are perceived to put people at risk. So I decided to stay away, just so that there wouldn't be that extra noise. It's time we get away from the noise. So that leads me to the second aspect of this thing. I've tried to give you the simplified version of what has happened and what I've seen, both at the original Mingo count and now at the recount of the same pieces of paper. But what's happening in our increasingly polarized, fragmented, ugly society is that both large parties, and remember both parties created this mess, because both parties sat down and decided this is how we're going to create GECOM. You appoint 3, I appoint 3, this is the system. Both parties enjoy the winner-take-all system. And now that one party realizes it's going to lose, if it's fairly done, it's cheating, so it can continue to winner-take-all. It can continue to enjoy the fruit of government in the winner-take-all system. Both parties are at fault. But what I see happening is that both parties are adding to the noise. So Mr. Granger comes in here last week, and he does a tour and a walk around. And I see that the PPP loyalists say, what's he doing here? He's coming to have a secret meeting. Come on. If I'm going to have a secret meeting, I'm not going to walk in here in front of all the cameras to have my secret meeting. The gentleman came in here, he walked around. I don't know why he did it. I have my own view. But when the PPP talk about secret meetings, they add to the noise. They add to the confusion. The same way that when APNU publishes, as I saw they published on social media today, this big ad saying that in Region 1 we found these 6 anomalies in 63 places of poll. Ridiculous. There have been no anomalies. The anomalies they're talking about, and this is what I want to say to you, is an APNU individual sitting down in a workstation and saying, we state that 4 people at this place of poll were out of the country and 2 people were dead. Well, all of us could sit down and say that. But there has not been a shred of evidence produced to support that. And in any event, that has nothing to do with the fact that we are counting pieces of paper in a box. So we have noise on both sides by parties that are rotten. And it is polarizing our society. It is making tempers frayed. And it is the most unpatriotic and undemocratic exercise of power that I have seen by both of them.
Mr. Jonas, 2 questions. One, apart from the party agents, GECOM did confirm that they are, apart from Region 4, in the other regions, that they are unstamped ballots that are present in those boxes that have gone as rejected, and that was a pattern. That was raised as an objection. How do you respond to that as an anomaly that GECOM has to treat with? And one party is also saying, and they did put out proof for one person, that person was dead and they were marked as being voted in the elections. And you mentioned the winner-take-all system. This is my second question.
No, that's your third. You're throwing questions at me, but throw. Right. I realize this is a dangerous place these days. That's all right.
The winner-take-all system by the 2 major political parties. What type of governance then do you recommend for Guyana to replace that system that is so obviously damaging our country?
All right. Your first question is about unstamped ballots. Now, when you go into, let me start at the beginning. Before the 2nd of March, there was a period of advertising by GECOM, informing the public about a number of things. The first thing GECOM said is claims and objections. Here's our list. We're putting it up. If you all see anybody who shouldn't be on this list in your neighborhood, please come and let us know. Show your death certificate, show something, and we'll take the name off. The period of claims and objections was extended to 49 days so that this process could be brought to conclusion and the list of electors could be as sanitized and accurate as possible. So you got your list. The next thing GECOM did when they were advertising before elections is they said they got some things you need to do. You mark with an X. You don't mark on the left-hand side. You don't mark on the name that says ANUG. You don't mark on the symbol that shows the telephone. You mark in the empty box to the right. I'm sure all of you remember this. And GECOM said, don't mark so that your X goes over the lines. Put your X inside the line. And then GECOM said, Don't erase and try and mark somewhere else if you change your mind. If you change your mind, come give us back the piece of paper. We'll give you another one and you could mark your vote properly. And another thing that GECOM said is make sure when they hand you the ballot that both regional and general show the stamp, the 6-digit stamp of the place of poll where you are voting. Don't take no unstamped ballot. Now, you've talked about a pattern, and no one has said a pattern yet. GECOM didn't say a pattern. There are anomalies in all of these regards. There are people who put the X in 2 places. I saw 2 ballots where the voter put his X in every single box. Vote for everybody. I don't know if that's a pattern of an anomaly. I saw another one where instead of putting an X, he put a tick. I saw another one where instead of ticking in the box, instead of putting the X in the box, he put the X on the sign, on the logo. These are all anomalies. I saw one where somebody's name or thumbprint or something was at the back of the ballot. You're not supposed to have anything to show who you are. So there is, as part of the system, a screening process when you're counting these pieces of paper, when you're counting these ballots. The ballot will come up, you see an X next to APNU. 1 vote for APNU. Ballot comes up, X next to the cup. 1 vote for PPP. When the ballot comes up and you see 2 X's, that is a vote which cannot count, and therefore it is put in a separate category. When you see a ballot come up and it doesn't have a stamp on it, that is a vote that cannot count, and it is put in a separate location. It is not credited to any party because it is a void vote. This is not a pattern of anomalies. This is something that occurs every time. So that on the statement of poll, and you've seen the statements of Recount, they're on social media, and the statements of poll are the same. You will see number of votes for APNU, number of votes for PPP at the top, number of votes for ANOG, much smaller number. Number of votes for LJP and all the others. But you will also see that there are entries for unused ballots, spoilt ballots, rejected ballots. So that you add all of those things up, so that you know if 100 people come to vote at this place, you must have 100 stubs that you tear out the ballot and you get the people. So you must see 100 stubs reflecting those 100 voters. You must have 100 pieces of paper, regional and general, in the box. But you may only have 60 valid votes. Because 40 of those people, some put the X in 2 places, some there's no stamp, some they put the X in the wrong place so that you don't know who it is, and some they put a name or they put a thumbprint or something.
There's a confirmed instance of where one box had more ballots than the crossed off number of persons that voted on the official list. And the unmarked ballot that I'm referring is believed to be at the polling stations where the joint services votes or ballots were intermixed, which were supposed to be stamped and weren't stamped.
All right, let me ask you this. You see, you're making a statement, but you're making a statement that cannot be made from the information that is available to us. You've decided that those unstamped ballots belong to joint forces.
I said it is presumed that that's
you didn't say presumed. You did
were
not say
supposed to be
presumed.
intermixed.
Fortunately, we are recording. But you said that the unstamped ballots are joint forces. And I'm saying we cannot know that. But what we do know is that all of us were informed as voters. When you vote, check. And all of us know that when you look at the statement of count, you see valid votes for this party, valid votes for that party, spoiled votes, return votes, rejected votes. And you know why. Now, it may be that in some boxes, you don't like the number of people who put X's in every single area. Or you don't have like the number of ballots that don't have a stamp. This is not the forum to second guess that. Because in this forum, we are counting pieces of paper. We don't have the information here. It is not part of this screening process to go to examine if Tom Jones, voter number 21, actually turned up at that day to vote at that station. because that information is not available in that box. It's not part of our exercise. Our exercise is counting the pieces of paper and reconciling them against what the original statement of count is. That's our job.
How would you respond to the list, the official list of electors, which is supposed to be crossed off, the name every time you vote, that, okay, hypothetically, we have 120 persons crossed off, and in that particular box, you have 140 ballots?
I'm not aware of that example. Has that happened?
Yes.
120 and 140?
Hypothetically, but the numbers, but that did happen because that was confirmed to us here.
The word hypothetically?
There was a box that had more ballots in it than the names on the official list that was crossed off.
The word hypothetically?
No, I gave you an hypothetical number.
The word hypothetically is a word that you expect from Shane Warren or more literal. I am here to explain a simple system and how the system works. You will remember that when I came out, the first thing I said is that it is manifestly unfair where the system could be transparent and you could be in there seeing it happen, that you're out here collecting spin from people.
This is not spin, this is GECOM. GECOM confirmed that yes, the word box, which they will have to look at and decide what will happen, that the official list of electors got X number of persons crossed off, and there were more ballots than that number in the box.
Okay. Well, let's assume something like that happens.
Something like that did happen.
Hypothetically or really?
Actually.
Good. Let's assume something like that happens. And let us step back and pretend that we are interfacing with professionals who are doing their jobs with integrity.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard to do. It's becoming more and more difficult to do in Guyana. The question then arises, if you see that there's an anomaly between the original count and the original recount, for whatever reason and whatever number, when you add those anomalies up, the question that has to be asked is, are these anomalies numerically large enough that they affect the outcome? Or should they be discounted? Should they be ignored? Because there will be anomalies. There's human error. And although I talk about the professionalism with which those completed regions were counted by the original people who counted the statements of poll, the votes to get the statement of poll, there will always be human error. So it wasn't exact. I think in one of the regions there were 5 votes off, in another region there were 3 votes off, something like that. So let us use those examples. Are 5 votes and 3 votes sufficient that you have to say they will prejudice the outcome of who won and who lost? If I've won by 10,000 votes, is 20 votes going to affect, is an anomaly of 20 votes going to affect the outcome? So if you step back and you look at it from a professional, objective point of view, the answer to your question is, if you find anomalies, you assess the anomalies and decide if they are numerically sufficient that they will affect the outcome that you are seeing to be declared. I hope that answers the question. Is there anything else?
Yeah, the question in terms of the government structure, the governance structure.
Okay.
As against the unity policy.
Okay. Well, you'll forgive me a second of disclosure. I know this gentleman and I know that he is a fair journalist, but I also know he's not a friendly journalist today. If you look at ANOG's manifesto and ANOG's advertisements and ANOG's statements from before this whole fiasco started, if you looked, you might have voted ANOG. ANOG has proposed a system of governance that will solve all of this. Let me tell you something. Bar Jaglio is a patriot. He doesn't hate Guyana. David Granger is a patriot. He doesn't hate Guyana. And both of them want a good road built outside your house. But in their governments, both respective governments, and if anybody disagrees, please tell me you disagree. There is corruption, there is nepotism, there is unfairness, so that contracts go to family and friends, you skim off the top, and you pay $200 million and you get a $100 million road, and the minister puts half in his pocket and the contractor puts half in his pocket, and that's what we have. The reason we have that is that in a winner-take-all situation, like our system, when it's time to build the road, the minister decides who gets in the contract, he decides how much to approve, and I promise you, he doesn't give the contract to his enemy. I can guarantee you that. So we need a system. We can't rely on the people. We're seeing in here that the people all have feet of clay, that the people are all either compromised or willing to be compromised. So the system has to protect against that compromise. ANOC's proposed system of governance is very easy because governance is easy. The people who do the hard work in governance are not the ministers. If you see the intellectual quality of the ministers around when they stand up right here and talk to you, I think you will agree with me that they're not doing a very hard job. So the real work happens at the level below them, the management in central housing, the management in GPL, the people who go every day and do an honest day's work and go home. A lot of those managers, and we've seen it in a terrible way in the last 5 years, are also family and friends. And therefore we got square pegs and round holes. That's all right. That can be fixed. So how do we make sure that the ministers that we have in cabinet implementing the system are doing their jobs well and their decisions reflect the will not just of the people that look like us, but the people that look like the other half? How do we do that? Is there anybody here who feels that a Chandra Paul is less Guyanese than a Carl Hooper? Because if we start on that premise, if we start on the premise that Dr. Serge Bali is just as Guyanese as Dr. Waldron, then we got to find a way that Dr. Serge Bali and Dr. Waldron feel comfortable with the government they have. And let me tell you, in the last 5 years, Dr. Serge Bali, and I'm not talking his name personally, you know what I'm talking about, Prasad Singh, whatever, has not felt comfortable. And before 2015, Griffith and Lewis did not feel comfortable. We got to fix that. The winner-take-all system is preferential, it is harmful, it destroys us. It leaves us corrupt and rotten just like we are, and it leaves everybody vexed just like all of you are. So how do we fix it? In a boardroom, you don't need friends. Because in a boardroom, when you're making your decisions, you make it by majority. But everybody knows what is the decision being made. Everybody has involved in the discussion. And when you say in the boardroom, I want to hire my boy Prasad to build the road, Mr. Lewis can say, for all that money, you joking. I got somebody here who building a better road for less. And if the majority still go and hire Prasad to build the road, Mr. Lewis can come right here and stand up in this dangerous place that y'all have created and tell the whole country about the rot and the corruption that was involved in giving this man a contract to build the road, because he was in the boardroom when the decision was made. You do not all have to be friends in a boardroom. But when we talk about inclusive governance, I hear shallow, superficial responses saying, oh, then all of them will thief all them in a room. Nonsense. Take 5 people. 2 APNU, 2 PPP, and 1 ANOC. 5 people in a boardroom. 2 APNU, 2 PPP, and 1 ANOC. And say, we got to build a road. We all want to build the road because we're all patriots. But APNU want to hire Patterson to build the road. PPP want to hire Prasad to build the road. So you got 2 votes for Patterson and 2 votes for Prasad. You got a swing vote that will do the right thing. And if that swing vote gets bribed by PPP, APNU coming out to tell the story right away because there has been transparency in the process. If the swing vote gets bribed by APNU, PPP will come out right away to say, look what's going on, because they are involved in the process. It's when you make decisions behind closed doors that you have a problem. The system of governance that we are proposing solves this. The party that wins the most votes is entitled to appoint 2 ministers to government. The party that wins the second most votes is entitled to appoint 2 ministers to government. I hope you see right away that this big fight we have just stopped. Because if you win or if you come second, you're appointing 2 ministers. The party with the third most votes appoints. The party with the third most votes appoints one. No problem. You difficult. I want you here next time.
No, it's the noise, and if you're going to use it, you know.
People don't laugh at my jokes, but I don't know why. The party with the most votes is entitled to appoint 2 ministers. The party that wins the second most votes is entitled to appoint 2 ministers. The party that wins the third most votes is entitled to appoint 1 minister. 5 ministers in 5 constitutional ministries. Don't worry, all these 100 ministries and sub-ministers and ministers that this government has created that my taxpayers' money got paid for. 5 ministries. Those 5 ministers constitute the cabinet. We all know what the cabinet is. So that cabinet sits down, 5 people that vex with each other. And they have to decide who they'll employ to run Georgetown Hospital. They have to decide who will get the contract to build the East Coast Road to Borbies. Now, I'm telling you, they all want the road built. But you know what's going to happen? The best person for the job will get it at the best price. Because if not, somebody will come here and stand up to tell you about it. So, that cabinet of 5 constitutional ministries, each of the ministers will rotate yearly for the 5-year electoral cycle as president. There's a nominal president. It's not an important position, but you must have somebody to go to the meetings and drink tea at when you are holding a conference. So every year they rotate it. And every year they rotate the ministry that they're in charge of for the 5-year electoral cycle. So that if I'm in charge of the Ministry of Social Development, which got health, and I put Colonel so-and-so to run Georgetown Hospital, Colonel so-and-so got to understand that next year somebody else is going to be in charge of the ministry responsible for health, and her job tenure is likely to be 1 year. So what's going to happen is people will be employed into positions where they know they're entitled to the job. So they could look at the success in the face and say, I'm qualified for this job, I've done a good job, fire me. We don't have that now. And that system of governance exists. It exists in Switzerland, and it is what we are proposing. But the most important reason we're proposing it is that if you know the winner gets 2 ministries, 2 ministers, and the winner of the second most gets 2 ministers, suddenly you can have a fair election. Mr. Mingo can't do what he did because there's no motive for it.
Mr. Jonas, if I may ask, based on what has happened over the past 17 days of the recount, where does ANOG stand in the sense of being able to win a seat or win 2 seats or 3 seats in the National Assembly?
From our assessment of the votes as properly counted, ANOG by itself doesn't win a seat. But you will remember that before elections, ANOG formed a joinder with 2 other parties. And among those 3 parties, ANOG, LJP, and the New Movement, we believe that we have won a seat. Now, of course, the deal isn't done. In fact, the deal by a long shot isn't done. All kinds of spin happening. But if there's a fair result, we believe we've won a seat. And I can say I would be disappointed if I'm proven wrong. I'm fairly certain on a fair count that we have a seat.
Mr. Jonas, this is my final question. Depends on how you answer it. Are you concerned about the process of the electoral process itself? Because again, there are allegations, there are objections to persons voting, who might have migrated and someone that is dead, right? That this was allowed to be perpetrated, right? Even if it's one in each instance, right? And I have seen one and it has not been objected to. Okay, GECOM is yet to investigate, but does that concerns you in any way that can be allowed?
If a dead person or overseas person voted, if it concerns me,
the names are crossed out.
That's what you're asking me? Of course it would concern me. But what concerns me much more is the fact that APNU is making that allegation with no evidence whatsoever, not a shred of evidence. You talk about a death certificate. The name of that death certificate is Emmanuel. And if you look down on that same voters list, you will see 2 people with that name Emmanuel.
Yes, but not a certificate and not Emmanuel.
Well, I just gave you a specific with a name. I am inviting you to give me a specific with a name because I'm not spinning.
Let's check your website.
You see, I'm not spinning. So the allegations by APNU are so farcical. Let me tell you. According to the count, PPP is claiming to have won by about 30,000 votes. In some places, they say 35. But let's call it 30,000.
15. They've been maintaining 15,000. They say they won the election by 15,000.
15,000 more than APNU.
Yeah.
Okay, because the location I heard said 30. But all right, I'll go with your figure 15,000. If you have a system as the opposition, not as the incumbent, as the people on the outside looking over the fence inside, if you can devise a system where you can get, let's say, 5,000 people to go and vote, not just for themselves, but to go and vote back 3 more times to make it 15,000, right? My maths is good, I hope, and no lawyers ain't good at maths. You need 5,000 people to go back and vote 3 times each. The first time and then 3 more times. Am I correct? So let's talk about this logistically. We're in a board meeting now. Let's talk about this logistically. PPP will have to recruit 5,000 people. And we'll have to say to them, y'all got to find the time to go and vote, stick your finger, wipe off the ink, go home, change, put on whatever makeup you need to put on so that you look vaguely like this dead person or this overseas person, because you got to go back and show ID. Go back and do it. Go home, bathe, change, put on more makeup so you look like a third person. You got to make sure it's all men. You got to make sure it's all your age. I can't do it because it's all red. Man, you ain't going to find me like me.
Do you think that is
I want you to hear my answer.
difficult?
I want you to hear my answer. You got to find 5,000 people, each of whom goes back to do this 4 times. Now, they're not going back to the same place of poll because these accusations by APNU all over the country. So if you vote in LBI the first time, you might go to Sophia to vote the second time. You might go to Tocqueville the third time, and you might go reach till into Mary the 4th time. Each time going home to change and put on your makeup and get your ID card. Don't mix up your ID card. You gotta make sure you carry the right 5,000 people. If PPP accomplish that, when you have APNU agents in the place, PPP agents in the place, GECOM agents in the place, and every time wipe off the finger, clean and go back and do it again 4 times, and 5,000 people accomplish this. 5,000 people accomplish this 4 times in one day without a whisper, so that the next day, Patterson, King David, Kemraj, Basil, all of them say we had a good fair election. The international observers say we had a good election. Me, who went and voted and saw it peacefully done, say we had a good election. If PPP pulled that off, vote PPP. Because they're really, really good. They get my vote if they pull that off. Because that is what is being sold to you. Shane Warren coming down here and bowling that nonsense at you, and you listening. You have a response to that? Because that's how I see it, logistically.
I don't have to respond.
No, you don't, but you don't, and I'm not challenging you, but that's a comfortable position. Are there any more questions? Any more?
Yes, I just had one of them. Yes, you mentioned earlier in your statement that the process is quite credible, it's professional.
This process here?
Yes.
Did I say that? What I said is that the evidence so far has proved that in each place of poll, the count of the ballots has been done fairly and professionally, as has been demonstrated in the 2 regions which are completed.
Okay.
And no, I'll go further and help you, because I'm not challenging it. What I've seen so far here is that the count has been fairly done. There has been sloth. There's been no attempt by GECOM to speed up the process, or insufficient attempt to speed up the process. It's been belated and bureaucratic. But the only fly in the ointment so far has been the nonsensical allegations about dead people and foreign people with no proof.
So you will give the process a A, a B, the current recount process.
Good. I'm glad you asked that question. It's an interesting question. On the evening of the 2nd of March, I gave the voting process an 8. Because PPP and the 5,000 people each of whom voted 4 times fooled me. So I gave the voting process an A.
The recount I'm talking about.
I'm getting there. By the time Mingo finished corrupting that process, it got an F. By me, by the Americans, the Canadians, the European Union, OAS, ONRTA, everybody, they get an F. So at this stage, you're asking me about no. I'm saying so far it's an A. But you do not know what will happen down the road. And I'm going to ask you, don't quote me 2 weeks down the road when, or if, I hope, I pray there's no problem. There's a problem, you take a little snapshot and say, oh, we got an A. So far, it is doing well.
Yes, and that is to ask you this. Since the process has gotten an A from you, and I think, not I think.
Well, I said they'll fly in the ointment,
yes.
Right? Yeah, okay.
Up to this point, all the parties or all the stakeholders have so far given the process an A, because some say excellent and transparent and credible. Do you see then the need to since Carter Center, they are not here, that this process can be deemed credible when it is completed, if it is completed?
Now let me tell you something.
Same transparency and credibility.
Let me tell you something. The first thing I said when I stood up here is that it is unforgivable that you are standing out here and gotta listen to spin by people who come and feed you information. You're not in there with the power to see for yourself. That's the first thing I said. The more people in there, the more transparent it is. The more people can see with their own eyes, just like I saw with my own eyes in Ashman Building. The more people that can see, that's what we need. Yesterday, there was national elections in the nation of Burundi. You may not have heard of Burundi. Burundi is a dictatorship in Africa. 2 days before the election, international observers were saying, we want to come and watch this election. You're not answering. The president of Burundi, the incumbent in that election, announced that if international observers wanted to come into Burundi to watch the election, he had no problem. But after arrival, they have to subject themselves to 14 days quarantine before they could go in public and watch the election. Now, that's 2 days before the election. The tricks that are being played here are not new tricks. These are old dogs. They're not teaching us anything that hasn't been done elsewhere. So Burundi had their elections yesterday. And given that none of us come from Burundi, I hope we can be objective. Who do you think is going to win the Burundi election? The more people you bring in here, the more transparent it is. And given what we already know about the dearth of credibility, about the lack of integrity, you need everybody in there that you could bring in to see. It is very inconvenient to undermine a process when you got plenty eyes watching you. It is that same inconvenience and this same cell phone that allows you to take videos that we are now able to see the footage of what happened in Ashman's and draw our own conclusions. That is what we need. We need transparency. Carter wants to come, he should come. He's accredited.
Thank you, Mr. Jonas.
Thank you very much.